It's Monday, May 20th. I am Clint Lambert. I am the host today of Village in Motion, and we're going to be talking about wine. And I have in the studio with me two people who are wine connoisseurs and very knowledgeable. Yes, right, that's what they are, about wine. No, I have not had anything to drink yet this morning. But we have Jason Healey, who is our assistant dining director, and we have Jim Coulter, who is truly our enophile, which means that he is a wine connoisseur and probably the most knowledgeable resident about wine that we have here at Green Spring. And we're glad to have both of you with us this morning.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Jason, you're doing a lot of stuff since you've been here. You've been here now, what, over a year?
Yeah, I'm about 18 months.
Yeah, a lot of changes.
Yeah.
And you've changed the wine program.
Yes.
Are we going to expect more changes with the wine program?
I think so. The one thing that we got out of last focus group and just kind of through table touches with residents, I think we used to do more kind of retail selling of wine out of the restaurants, and that's kind of a weird thing when it comes to our liquor law. So we have the ability to actually sell bottles of wine out of the restaurant, but not in the convenience stores. And we did try to get the licensing, but we weren't able to, which is fine. You know, we still have the ability, and I think more of our residents actually buy wine to enjoy with dinner,
right,
or maybe they like something and take it home. So with that coming up, you know, we kind of had changed from the little airline bottles to larger bottles, right, bringing different varieties in by the glass, which has been very popular. So I think this is kind of the next evolution for that. But really what we're going to look for is, because, you know, the big thing I hear is I want a good value for what I'm purchasing and what I'm drinking. And to one degree, we don't ever purchase as much as a Total Wine or a Trader Joe's or your local grocery store or wine store. So for us, what we are going to really kind of do and really would like input is tell us certain types of wine that you would like to buy and maybe buy a couple bottles of, whether to give or whatnot. And what we can start doing is with the distributors that we work with, we kind of give them a list of saying, hey, here's things that we're looking for, because when wine, sometimes like cars, when it changes vintage years, when they're changing maybe marketing or logoing, they do have a lot of wine left in their warehouses that sometimes become harder to sell. So it's great wine, just because they changed the label on it or something to that regard, that you can buy at a discount, and then we could pass that discount off to our residents.
Oh, super, super. Yeah, but it's really interesting that you mentioned that, and about changing labels. On wines, and I know that a lot of things that are sold at Trader Joe's are things where the label has been changed on a wine.
Yes, Trader Joe's is pretty big on their wine and beers. They, you know, kind of like your grocery stores. You know, the can of green beans you get, you know, it's still Green Giant. It's just saying Giant Food on it instead. And then they have those contracts with the larger winemakers as well.
Okay, very, very good. Yes, Jim.
Jason mentioned about selling bottles of wine out of the dining room, and I know that residents sometimes hesitate to buy a large bottle of wine because they figure they can't finish it all for dinner that night, or they shouldn't. Can they take the unused portion of that home with them?
Yeah, cork and carry.
So that way they could buy themselves a full bottle of wine, which might be cheaper per serving, and take the unused portion home and either drink it there or bring it back the next night to have with their dinner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point.
So they could buy a 750 milliliter bottle, drink what they want out of that, cork it, take it home.
Yep.
Speaking of price of wine, what are we charging now for a bottle, and what are we charging for a glass?
It varies a little bit depending on what the wine is. I would have to take a look back. We haven't raised prices, I know, since January. So we typically try not to raise our prices throughout the year. So sometimes that's great because the wine doesn't change on us. Sometimes it does change throughout the year. But that really kind of, you know, when we were setting our initial price, we kind of put a little bit in for that inflation. But we've been lucky in the regards of, especially our house wine, we kind of have longer contracts on that. So we know, when we made the decision to go to our new one, we said, do we have is the supply there?
Right.
Is the pricing guaranteed for 12 months? And all of those kind of issues. And they've been great to work with, so we're happy about that.
Yes, Jim.
When you get to the end of those contracts, do you often change the supplier or the wine because of price, where you're able to get maybe they're raising their price $1, you can find something that's more in line with what your existing price was, so that you can maintain your price point but offer a different Cabernet Sauvignon, for example,
As opposed to going ahead and
same
increasing
price.
the price.
Yes, so that has happened in the past, where a certain wine, maybe when it's newer to the market, comes in at a lower price point,
Right.
it builds popularity, and they increase the cost.
Yes.
I know one, not here, but one program we ran an Australian house wine that was really good. It was very economical at the time, but because of drought and transportation costs going up, the wine itself went up. And exactly what you said. We found a wine that was very comfortable, that people who enjoyed this type of wine, palates would enjoy that type, but we always try to keep that price range in check.
Okay. And price range right now is running what, about $8 to $12?
Yeah.
For a bottle.
So
Okay.
that would be about $2 a glass, roughly. Figure that you get five glasses out of a 750 milliliter. So
And
that $8 to $10 range would be from $1.50 to $2.50
Yeah.
a glass would be how they could estimate that.
Yeah.
And a glass of wine is going for what, $3.50 now, I think.
So you do save buying the bottle compared
Yes.
to the glass,
Right.
and that pricing is also incorporates us. After we open a wine, you can keep it for a little bit, but you can't keep it indefinitely. So if it doesn't sell, we do have waste that way. We also try to utilize wine that's been open. It hasn't been served. If it's a day or two old, we'll try to incorporate that. And if we're cooking with wine, but ultimately there is a waste factor when you're dealing with the bottle system.
Right. Okay. Speaking of waste, some of our wastes are getting larger than others. But one of the things is the number of calories in a bottle of wine, in a glass of wine. It varies.
Yeah, it does. And that's kind of a hard thing. You really need to kind of look. The internet's great. You can find a lot of great information there. As of today, I haven't heard of anything, but probably for good reasons, they'll fight not to put the calorie counts on the bottles. So that does vary a lot. Actually, I have some great information from our dietitians.
Okay.
So one of the things when it comes to, and this is kind of like a generic, typically when you're looking at red wine by the glass, you're looking at around 4 grams of carbs. Your alcohol is like 3.1 grams per glass. But red wine actually typically has more calories in it than white wine. White wine, though, has a little bit higher on the carbs. It's 5 grams average, but it's 2.5 grams a glass, kind of more on your sugar content. Your alcohol content. However, overall, it has less calories. So it kind of balances a little bit. And then some other facts about wine that we got from our dietitians. Red wine, grapes are darker and the grape juice is fermented, still containing the grapes or pieces of the grapes. So the solids are removed after fermentation. That's why the color is darker. White wine grapes are pressed and only the juice is fermented.
Right.
Health benefits, they do say red wine has resveratrol, which acts similar to an antioxidant in the body, protecting your body against damage. Through health, it helps prevent, can help to prevent cancer and heart disease. Red wine is part of the Mediterranean diet for the antioxidant effects on your body. White wine is good as well, just not to the same level as red. But there's that balance, and this is where I have a lot of conversation with people about health and wellness. And not everyone's in the same box. And so a lot of these conversations, what is best for you, is conversations you should have with your doctor.
Right.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, they give recommendations on how much wine to or do not drink. I always default to your doctor, and they'll kind of tell you. And that changes depending on your medical condition, your age, your weight, and also, too, you always have to be very cautious of whatever prescriptions you're on.
And unfortunately, there's not a diet wine.
There's not. I do know of some people who have tried to drink wine on a treadmill. It doesn't work out well, but the main thing too is, I think, just like anything, it's moderation.
Right.
And it's one of those things where a lot of people only think about the calories they're eating, but throughout the course of the day, think about the calories you drink too. So that's your wine, but that's also if you cream or sugar in your coffee, sodas, anything to that level, juice. So when you're looking at those things, kind of put that in your total perspective.
Yeah, because the lattes are very high.
Yeah. I did run a Starbucks for a while, and you could literally get an entire day's worth of calories in one cup.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember too that while wine has some properties that are helpful, basically it's not a health drink.
No.
And I never recommend that people drink red wine because of the resveratrol, because I've read articles that say that you'd have to drink several bottles a day to get any benefit, whereas now they've got pills you can take.
Yeah.
But I think that the Mediterranean diet is a thing that's often mentioned in this, and I know that my wife is a big fan of Italian food, and I like Spanish and Italian food. And part of the advantage of wine as part of the Mediterranean diet is that the Mediterranean diet is a good diet. I mean, it's got lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, olive oil instead of butter, and so forth. And wine as a part of that basically is, I know from having a lot of meals in Spain on trips over there, that you tend to eat more and better if you're having a glass or two of wine with dinner. Sure. And I think that that wine is part of the whole overall dining experience. That is a good way to enjoy a meal is with wine if your doctor says it's all right for you to do that. And if the doctor says you can't have it, why, there are non-alcoholic wines that taste almost like they might have once been wine. But there are fruit juices and other things you can drink that give you a lot of the same benefits of enjoying food along with them.
Excuse me, but as you said, it's really a dining experience.
Yeah.
And wine is an experience, and everybody doesn't have the same experience when they have a glass of wine in regards to things. And some of that you've seen here at Green Spring with our age increased, with the medications we're on.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes back to the factor of, and I have a lot of conversation with people, whether that be wine or food-based. This used to taste better, 5 years ago, or this wine or this beer I used to really enjoy, but now I don't care for the taste of it.
Right.
So there's a couple of things with that. One is our taste buds are always aging and developing. Sometimes you can get to a point where you're going to taste certain characteristics of whether that be a wine or a food stronger, and then that comes into your personal preference. You might not like, that you're tasting bitter stronger. You might like sweet better, but your taste buds now have developed where you're getting more of that out of something. The same thing as I always tell people too, just like food, wine, a lot of it is the nose. And so if you have allergies, or if you're, taking certain medication that change your taste buds just temporarily, those are big factors, and I think you always have to kind of take that into play and have the conversation with someone. I told you the example of my mother when I ran a wine shop. She's very particular. So she would come in, she would love something. I would always kind of get a couple bottles off to the side, and 6 months later, maybe she's over at the house for dinner. Let me open this bottle of wine you really like. Takes one sip. Oh, this is horrible. This is awful. It's gone bad. Let me taste it. Nope, it's the exact same wine, but because of maybe she had a dental procedure, or maybe she was on a medication, or maybe just because she was 6 months older, it changed a little bit.
Exactly.
Maybe it was the company.
Actually, that's but that's kind of a big thing too, and I tell people that is when it's such a huge factor. I can tell you some of the best wines I've ever had probably weren't because they were the best wines I ever had. It was the company, it was the environment I had in it, or it's the pairing with food, that really kind of make it. And that's kind of, we love to see it here during the daytime. We seem to be people who meet people around the coffee machine. But we're starting to see even more people kind of get a glass of wine while they're waiting for a table in the lobby and making kind of friends that way. And that's, this is sometimes how you can get to, learn about the best wine, sometimes through a new friend.
Right.
So.
Yes, Jim.
One of the things that I like to mention when I'm on these shows is Total Wine has coupons in the newspaper, the Washington Post, that offer 15 or 20% off on their special wines that they have. And I've found that that's a great way to introduce yourself to different wines. If you go in there with a coupon for 15% off, for example, and you buy 6 or 8 different kinds of wine,
Right.
if the average price of those is $8 a bottle, 15% off is $1.40 off of each of those bottles. And you can make your money go further that way, and it gives you an excuse to go in and try a Romanian Cabernet Sauvignon or a Australian Sauvignon Blanc or something that you maybe didn't want to try or have never thought about trying. And if you find that you're not having satisfying experiences with the wines you're drinking now, you can do that. In the dining rooms, you can order a strange wine by the glass that you may not have thought about trying before.
Right.
And the menus that they print ahead of time give you an idea about, think about, well, this is what I'm going to have for dinner tomorrow night. Maybe I'll think about a wine to go with that.
Okay.
And I think with Total Wine, and I do recommend this to people, especially if they're just getting into wine or if they want to try different things, is Total Wine still does what like old like Blockbusters, movie rental places did, where this employee recommends this wine.
Right.
And I know actually the program at Total Wine, and it is 100% true, they don't put your face on a wine just because they want to sell it. It's wines that all of the associates have had, and they really do like it. And what you'll find is, if you find 1 or 2 wines that you really enjoy, and it's the same employee who picked them, probably your flavor profiles match that employee's, and you're probably going to, not 100%, but you're probably going to like anything at that point that they like, which is always a good way to try out. I know for myself, my mother doesn't live in the area, and I can't always pick up the phone and tell her, like, okay, so what are you looking at? Where are you going? So her rep's name is Michael. Michael works every Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that's when she stops at Total Wine, and he typically will walk her through and recommend things.
Very good. Very nice.
Yeah.
Jim.
And another thing about Total Wine and Trader Joe's and other places around here is a lot of times they'll have a free tasting of 6 or 8 wines on a Saturday or a Friday, or you can call. If you're watching this over the internet someplace, call a couple of the local wine stores and ask, do you have free tasting? I know a couple of stores I used to frequent in the district. If I was looking for a case of wine for a party or something, often the guy would offer to open a bottle of it there and let me taste it before I committed to that kind of. It never hurts to ask questions. Ask, what are you willing to do for me? A lot of places will knock off 10% on the case if you buy a case of the same wine. Right. And I know the total coupon, sometimes it says on a $100 purchase or something. It doesn't say you have to buy all the same wine. You buy $100 worth of mixed wines and still get the discount. Yeah. So it pays to know the people and know the stores, and don't be afraid to talk to them, because most of them are willing to sell wine.
And in regards to that, many people don't realize that drugstores carry wines.
Yeah.
Walmart.
Grocery stores carry wine. Walmart carries wine.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of Wegmans.
Wegmans has a good program. Yeah.
They got a huge selection.
Walgreens has a good program with wines. And you can get some really good buys at some of these out of the way wine distributors and stores.
I think that's a good point. The other piece of that, and you kind of were talking about it, is we kind of think of the bigger chains, right? We think of Total Wine and the grocery stores, Costco, and things of that nature. One of the things, though, is, and it is I don't want to say a dying business, but a shrinking business, is that individual-owned wine store.
Yes. The mom and pop stores.
The mom and pop ones. And I can tell you, I ran one for a while, and I kind of got to learn that culture and that kind of group. Those are you don't do it for the money. You do it because you're passionate about wine, you love talking about wine, and if you want an education, those are the relationships, that you would have. I had the lucky to actually work next to a music store, and I ran a wine store. We were great friends.
Yes.
The two kind of went together very well, but it is a very much of a culture of wanting to try and sample things, and especially when you're interacting with the owners there. I'm not going to lie, you're probably not going to get the best price for, per purchase, but the experience, the education, the knowledge, and if you saying, oh, I really like this, they have the ability really to research and try to find stuff for you.
And to make notes and maintain those.
Yeah.
And so when you come in, they know what to offer you.
Yeah.
And another advantage they have is because they're small, they can get products from boutique wineries that
Yes.
Total Wine and Trader Joe's may not
Yes,
be
correct.
able to get the volume they need.
Exactly.
But if somebody wants to buy 2 cases of a wine from a small winery someplace, they'll be happy to put it on the shelf in their store. So you may be able to get wines that you can't get other places.
Because we have over 250 wineries here in Virginia.
Yeah.
Yep.
And how many of those are actually on every shelf?
Yeah, not many.
No, it's a small percentage.
And so if you went to these small wineries and had tastings, you may find something that you really do enjoy.
Yeah.
Almost every one of those 250 wineries has at least one wine that somebody here would probably enjoy.
Right.
It's just trying to find one wine that 50 people will enjoy may be more difficult.
Exactly.
But that's going to be the trouble anywhere.
Well, and the other thing is, and I don't know if you would agree or not, but just because you like wine does not mean you're an alcoholic.
No.
And I think many people associate that if they see you with a bottle of wine, so,
I think it's usually the opposite of that, is that the alcoholics are not very discriminating in where they get their alcohol, whereas a lot of us winos got our nose in the air about things.
Yeah, I think the big thing with that, and that kind of goes to, I think, sometimes stigmas, right?
Right.
So if you bring a bottle of wine to the dining room, oh, you're bringing a bottle of wine to the dining room. I just order a glass. Well, you can bring a bottle and just have a glass,
Right.
or share with someone else, And that's, one of the things that I think is really neat is, now, I don't know, I haven't talked to any residents who've tried this, but I could say, in another life, I would go on a lot of business trips and I would interact with other people. And you would kind of have common spaces in the hotels or in the workspaces, and kind of after hours, literally I would just bring a bottle of wine down and ask who would like some.
Sure.
It's a great way to meet friends.
Right,
Make new acquaintances and things of that nature. So.
Well, I remember when we moved in 11 years ago, Jim and Mina used to invite people to their table, and Jim would always have wine, and it was a great way to get to know the Coulters and to meet other people that they would invite over to their table.
And some people don't get invited anymore because they didn't leave enough for me.
Yeah.
But, again, it's what we like.
Yep.
It's not necessarily what you like or what Jim likes.
It's
or
all
what
very
Clint likes.
personal.
It's a personal experience in regards to it. And you said you may like it today and hate it tomorrow.
Yeah, it changes a lot, and it also too what you're pairing it with. I tell people that a lot of times too. I had this Cabernet that I liked a lot, and I said, oh, okay, well, I don't like it now.
Right.
Because there's certain wines that for me, I only drink with food because I need that balance of either the fat or the acid or the salt or something to complement the wine. And there's other wines which I just call, which makes it sound like they're not, but when I say drinkable, which means I can just have by itself. I don't need to pair it with something to enjoy it. And I think you need to learn that about yourself too.
Very good. We're starting to run out of time. Jim, closing comments or additional information?
I'm out of Chardonnay. No, I think it's important to emphasize to people that you don't have to drink with your meal. In fact, some people don't like to drink with their meal. They like to experience the taste of the food without any thing. And there's no stigma attached to that, and I kid around a lot with people about it. But I respect people's desires to have wine with their meal, not have wine with their meal. Some people, when I offer them a glass of wine at the table, they'll say, well, we had some wine at home before we came down. And if that's the way you prime the pump for your taste buds and so forth, why, that's great for them.
And I think what you just said is extremely important for people to realize and recognize is a lot of people used to have highballs before they
Yep.
came to dinner, and that's kind of a thing of the past. Now there may still be groups.
Some people still do that, I'm sure.
I'm sure they do. But now it's a fact of having a glass of wine together, or having a glass of wine before you come down for dinner.
Yeah.
In regards to it, so.
And part of that has to do, again, with the aging process, medical conditions. Wine's 14% alcohol, liquor is 20 to 40% alcohol. There's a lot more alcohol in a glass of whiskey than there is in a glass of wine. So if you want to enjoy that, if you cut back to something that's less alcoholic, then you can still enjoy it and not have the medical issues that you may have with something stronger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Additional comments?
I think it all kind of boils down to figuring out what works for you, whether that when you drink, if you drink, what do you drink. And I think the biggest thing is to take away is to not worry about stigmas. And if you have questions, ask people, or try new things. I think that's always a great thing. And then also too, if there's any particular wines you're looking for, always let us know, and that'll help us with kind of expanding our retail program.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well,
And if you want to see a wine in the dining room, don't hesitate to suggest the dining services that you want to.
sure.
Yeah,
Exactly.
put it on your comment cards or just let us know.
Well, Jason, thank you so very much for being here, and your knowledge base is wonderful and greatly appreciated. Jim, as always, good to see you. Glad to have you here.
I enjoyed letting Jason hog the microphone today.
Yeah, very good. But both of you, I mean, you have the knowledge about wine, and it's so nice to have that knowledge and for people to share that and feel comfortable.
It's fun to talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay, in regards to it. Again, thank you.
Thank
we
you.
look forward to having both of you back soon.
Thank you so much.
Okay.